Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Strategic Initiatives meeting for June 5th, 2023. Just to start off, we have anyone who can disclose any of their pecuniary interests or general nature of any members? No? Okay, this is a formal public meeting to consider applications under the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered, the person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And so we'll be dealing with items number 5.1, and that's official plan amendment application and zoning bylaw amendment application for 97-101 Park Street and 186-194 Victoria Street now South, dealing with 192-8393 Ontario Inc. And we have a staff presentation that will provide from Mr. Dumart for in attendance. Welcome. Go ahead, Mr. Dumart.
Okay, thank you, and good evening, members of committee. Before you is a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment application for the subject properties located at 97-101 Park Street, 186-194 Victoria Street South, proposing a 42-story mixed-use development. Staff are recommending approval of the proposed amendments. The subject lands include the consolidation of 7 properties, 97 and 101 Park Street, 186, 190, 192, and 184 Victoria Street South, as well as the large vacant unaddressed triangular portion at the rear of these properties that was previously part of 200 Victoria Street. The subject property is irregular in shape and has frontage along Park Street, frontage along Victoria Street South, and the subject properties directly abut the CN Railway at the rear of the property. 97 and 101 Park Street are currently developed with single detached dwellings, which are rented to tenants at market rate. 186 and 190 Victoria Street South are commercial buildings occupied by the developer's offices, while 192 and 194 Victoria Street South contains a semi-detached dwelling that is rented to tenants at market rate. So in total, there are 7 residential units that are currently rented to tenants at market rate. The owner has several other rental properties in the City of Kitchener and is committed to arranging for the relocation to new market rate units for these tenants and will be assisting and supporting in the relocation. The surrounding neighborhood consists of a mix of low, medium, and high-rise buildings, as well as commercial and institutional uses. There are several high-intensity mixed-use developments that are at various stages of development approvals in the neighborhood, as this neighborhood is situated in a prime area for redevelopment and intensification in the City of Kitchener. Next slide, please. Thank you. The subject lands are located in a major transit station area in the urban structure of the City of Kitchener's official plan, and also located in a major transit station area in the Region of Waterloo's official plan. Major transit station areas were approved by the region in August of 2022 and recently received final approval from the province. The major transit station area boundaries are finalized and they are in full force and effect. The planned function of major transit station areas is to provide density and developments that will support transit and rapid transit with a mix of residential, office, institutional, and commercial developments. The proposed development represents intensification and will help the city achieve density targets in an MTSA. The proposed development will support a higher density housing option that will help make efficient use of existing infrastructure, parks, roads, transit, and trails. Next slide, please. The subject lands are all currently designated as mixed-use corridor in the Victoria Street Neighbourhood Secondary Plan. And mixed-use corridors provide a residential redevelopment opportunity together with appropriate commercial, institutional uses, and they allow for a maximum floor space ratio of 4. The lands are currently zoned low-intensity mixed-use corridor zone in zoning bylaw 85.1, which permits multiple dwellings and a wide range of commercial and institutional uses and allows for a maximum floor space ratio of 2. So to permit the proposed high-intensity mixed-use development, the applicant is proposing to add Special Policy Area 2 to the Victoria Street Neighbourhood Secondary Plan to allow for a floor space ratio of 7.7 and proposing to change the zoning from low-intensity mixed-use corridor zone to high-intensity mixed-use corridor zone with special regulation provision 792R and holding provision 104H in zoning bylaw 85.1. Special regulation 792R will allow for an increased floor space ratio of 7.7, require a parking rate of 0.8 spaces per unit, and regulate building setbacks. Holding provision 104H is required to ensure matters related to urban design, traffic access on Victoria Street, noise and site remediation are addressed prior to lifting of the holding provision. So before you use the concept site plan for the proposed 42-story mixed-use development, which will include 436 residential units and 3 ground floor commercial units. The building is set back and consistent with adjacent buildings, which provides for adequate landscaping and patio spaces for the commercial units along Victoria Street. A wide range of unit types are proposed for this development, including 40 bachelor units, 87 one-bedroom units, 137 one-bedroom plus den units, 74 two-bedroom units, 36 two-bedroom plus den units, and 62 three-bedroom units. A total of 353 parking spaces for vehicles are proposed, and 296 bicycle parking spaces are proposed for this development. Primary vehicular access is proposed off of Park Street, and secondary vehicular access is contemplated off Victoria Street, and that will be further reviewed through the site plan approval stage. Over 3,600 square meters of landscape space, which is 53% of the total lot area, is proposed for this development, and that includes a privately owned, publicly accessible amenity space, which is located along Park Street, and this will help meet the needs of demand for residents in the surrounding community. Furthermore, additional amenity spaces will be provided for residents of the proposed development on the building rooftops and indoors, which will relieve additional pressures on nearby city-owned parks. So before you are building renderings for the proposed 42-story mixed-use development, and the rendering on the left of the screen shows the building situated along Victoria Street South. The Victoria Street frontage includes a well-defined base that is activated by at-grade commercial units in the building's lobby. The rendering on the right of the screen is from the rear of the property, which illustrates a well-defined podium and building stepbacks. Massing is broken up at the 6th, 11th, 14th, and 41st floor of the tower, which mitigate overlook issues and shadow impacts. The subject lands are located at one of the primary gateways to the city and the downtown. As such, extra attention to high-quality urban design that contributes positively to the public realm and streetscapes is expected for the subject property, with adequate tower separation and on-site amenity for future residents. So detailed design will be reviewed through the site plan design and approval processes, and an updated urban design report will be required prior to removal of the holding provision that staff is recommending apply to the subject lands. So this development proposal represents an opportunity. We have an opportunity here to redevelop an underutilized site and increase housing supply in a major transit station area. This development will contribute to meeting the city's intensification targets for the central major transit station area of 160 people and jobs per hectare, which currently does not meet that minimum target, as only 74 people and jobs per hectare are currently present. And that's based on the data from the 2021 Growth Management Report. The development will diversify housing stock and provide additional housing choices in the community and provide for a wide range of unit types. Housing diversity is needed to provide a greater housing choice and meet the needs of increasingly diverse residents and household types, such as young families, professionals, retirees, people with disabilities, all with various ranges of income. Furthermore, this development will provide an opportunity to introduce a new, compatible built form to the neighborhood that will help contribute towards a complete community with public amenity spaces that will directly benefit the community. In conclusion, staff are supportive of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments as they are consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the region official plan, and the City of Kitchener official plan, represent good planning, and are in the public interest. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Dumart. We do have some delegations, and I would just like to inform the delegates that each delegate is permitted up to 5 minutes to express their concerns or their thoughts on the project. And we do have, just to let the committee know, that we do have 3 written submissions that were done by Sheldon Altos, Ashley Harden, and Margaret Nichols. So with that, we will put up our first delegate, which is Dave Gilbrath from IBI. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of council. My name is Dave Galbraith, and I am the manager of planning with our Arcadis IBI Group here tonight on behalf of the owner and applicant. In terms of a brief outline tonight, I'll provide an overview of the site, its existing conditions. I won't go too much into the growth management and planning context, given that Mr. Dumart has already done so, but I'll speak to the development proposal here before you tonight as well. So this slide shows the location of the subject property west of the intersection of Park and Victoria Street, and it's bound at the rear of the site to a CN spur line. The lot is irregular in shape, having that large triangular piece at the back of the site that was previously owned by Imperial Oil. The site's also just west of the downtown core along Victoria Street, which has seen considerable redevelopment over the past number of years. So in terms of the development context of the site, Mr. Dumart had provided a bit of an overview, but this site is located west of many of the recent redevelopment proposals that are at various different stages in the development review process. On the left, you can see the recently approved project that was approved at the OLT on the other side of Park and Victoria Street, and then a couple of the other development projects further east along Victoria. This slide provides an overview of the development proposal. The building itself is a 42-story mixed-use development with 3 at-grade commercial units. Of the residential units, 436 are proposed, of which I wanted to highlight that 172 of them are 2-bedroom units or larger, including 62 that are 3-bedroom units, which would provide space for families family-oriented units. There are 3 at-grade commercial units, as well as the potential for a publicly accessible plaza at the 33rd floor of the development as well. As Mr. Dumart had mentioned, approximately 50% of the lot area is landscape and amenity space, which includes a large privately owned, publicly accessible plaza facing onto Park Street. This slide shows the proposed site plan for the development with the tower location highlighted in red. As you can see, there's two accesses into the site, one off of Park Street and one off of Victoria. The benefit of this is that left-turning traffic can use the Park Street access and then the signalized intersection, as opposed to trying to make the left-turn movement from onto Victoria. The next couple of slides show some elevations of the proposed development from different perspectives. The image on the left showing the western side of the proposed development. You can see the curved facade that generally responds to the curvature of the CN route corridor, and then the image on the right shows the eastern facade of the building. And here are a couple of renderings of the same. The image on the right shows the transition towards the rear of the property, a 14, 11, and 6-story step back, which transitions to the area north of the rail line, which is planned to be more stable, low-rise residential. This image here shows the proposed privately owned, publicly accessible plaza along Park Street, and the following slide shows some concept imagery for the landscape design of this area. The current proposal has a series of landscape berms here, as well as sitting areas and a large bike structure within this space, and it's approximately 5,000 square feet in size. So this slide summarizes the required and proposed planning applications, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith. We do have a question for you, Councillor Clancy.
Yeah, thank you. That's nice. I was curious, there was a reference made to sustainable measures on page 57. Can you speak to that? What are the sustainable measures you're implementing in this development?
So as part of the application, there was a sustainability statement prepared, and it's high level at this point, and is going to be refined through the site plan approvals process, but there's a number of elements here. So there's the parking reduction, encouraging active modes of transportation to the site. There's a large landscape percentage and coverage on the site, approximately 53% of the site, which is uncharacteristic for the downtown core. And then the applicant has considered a number of sustainable design measures to be implemented, but they're to be refined through the site plan approvals process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Duwani.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure where I read it, and I can't find it. I've been squirreling all over. Do we have people that are going to be evicted through this process as we break down and build elders?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there are 7 rental units currently, and as part of the process moving forward, my client does own a number of other projects and properties throughout the city, so he's going to work with existing tenants to find suitable relocations for them in the future.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll come back for staff later.
That's correct. We have no others in the queue, so we're going for the second round. Councillor Clancy.
Sorry, I should have taken my time the first time around. Have you made any consideration to incorporating either a contribution or some units that might be deemed affordable?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the focus from the developer's perspective has been to provide attainable housing and housing that's suitable to a broad range of potential occupants. At this point, they do not have a proposal for contribution to affordable housing, but as I'd mentioned before, a very high percentage of units that are planned as 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom suites, which there's been an identified need for that type of housing in the core.
Maybe let your client know we've appreciated when folks come to the council ready to make a contribution. This is a great supply of that mid-level type of development, but we have a big need for affordable units as well in the area. So, and I guess the landscaping is still to be determined. You know, that park space that you are speaking of, it looked very kind of paved. Well, is that the intention, or I guess that kind of is clarified in the site plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there was a conceptual landscape plan that's been proposed so far, but landscaping details are sorted out through the site plan approvals process. So we'd be working with staff to program them appropriately.
Yeah, I just heard from lots of downtown residents the worry about the heat island effect and the lack, and greenery helps with that, right? So anything we could do to cool our streets would be great. Does the developer, I'm not sure, maybe I have questions for staff.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. You may have already said this in your presentation, so I'm going to apologize in advance if you did. Can you tell me how many meters, how large the 3-bedroom units are? Or square feet, or however you measure it when you're building.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will have to just flip it to my plans here. I did not speak to that. So looking at the plans, there's some that are about 1,400 square feet, and then there's some larger units towards the penthouse that are not, like they're closer to 3,000 square feet penthouse units, but
Yeah, those are,
Yeah.
yeah, so the average three-bedroom is 1,400 square feet, you said?
I can't say for sure that's the average, but it's probably between 12 and 1,400 square feet.
Thank you, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Grauber. We don't have any further questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
Our next delegate is Matthew Goretis. That would be virtually, and I do apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly.
That is quite all right. Hello, my name is Matt Garretts. Thank you all for the time to listen to people's comments today. You might have seen the background there. I do want to make clear that I'm here as a private citizen, and I'm here to speak in favor of this project. I am someone who has lived in Waterloo region for 9 years. I do live in the city of Waterloo, not the city of Kitchener, just full disclosure. I came here for school originally. Actually, as of yesterday, I just moved to Ottawa, so I guess I'm no longer even a citizen of the city of Waterloo. But what I did want to do is make sure that I mentioned that I supported this project because it is the kind of place where I would have liked to live. Looking at the floor plans, it can be very hard to find larger apartments sometimes. I like the renderings. I like how centralized it was, close to amenities, close to a lot of workplaces in Kitchener, close to transit, and having lots of multi-bedroom options available. This is the kind of place that I would have liked to live in Ottawa. It's something that I couldn't find in Ottawa. And I ended up moving into something that was nice, but bigger and more expensive than I would have liked. So I want to be here to make sure that if somebody was in the same position as me, moving into Kitchener, that they're not put in the same position that I was. I was ready. I also want to move on to a second point, which is even while I was living in Waterloo, I was ready to live in another place, leave the place where I was. If that had happened in hypothetical, where I worked in Kitchener and not Ottawa, I would have loved to be able to move into something new, like a project like this, and leave my current location in Waterloo to somewhere where it can be useful for somebody who has a lower budget than I currently do, and freeing up an affordable unit further down the housing chain. I read a lot of the comments because this is a community decision, and a lot of the comments have been submitted with opposition around height, opposition around shadows, and it really does remind me of the importance of not just approving projects like this, but also making sure that there is effort to bring a lot of missing middle projects through, meaning more stacked townhouses, more low-rises, more three-plexes, more six-plexes, things that give competition to projects like this so that we're not forced into a binary of just talking about towers or single-family homes. I also saw comments around concerns around amenities, traffic, affordable housing. I read the documentation around a lot of this that was in the package, and I found myself personally satisfied, but I think it really reinforces also the idea and the importance of the city investing in active transit, investing in true publicly owned spaces, and also in affordable housing more generally, especially in partnership with the region. That's all I'm here to say today. I really want to thank you folks once again for listening to my comments. I want to reiterate my support for the project, and thank you for your time. Happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Mr. Goretis, for your presentation. We don't have any questions for you. Next up, we have Mr. Sheldon Atos. Welcome. Mr. Atos, you're on mute.
There we go. Better?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right.
Go ahead.
Prior to buying our home on Henry Street 7 years ago, we researched the surroundings and decided that the official plan and bylaws allowing for up to 10 stories of development along the Victoria Street South corridor adjacent to Henry Street would not infringe on our future enjoyment of the property. We proceeded with the purchase, invested many hours and a great deal of money into making the house into our forever home. This plan is being rapidly and forcibly removed from us by the changes being wrought in our surroundings. At what time did the zoning bylaws change from allowing for 10-story development to 42 stories being built? This is even more than the monstrous height of the development of Park and Victoria at 38 stories. At our current stage of life, the prospect of moving again to escape being overshadowed by an unanticipated, stylistically discordant, excessively tall condo tower is truly distressing. As well, has anyone fully researched the resultant change in traffic? You do realize that there is frequently a significant traffic accident at the Park and Victoria intersection, don't you? With the increased traffic count, which will be the result of nearly 1,600 condo units being built within a few meters of this intersection, it will be impossible to navigate in and out of Henry Street and Teresa Street safely, not to mention the entrances and exits to this and other proposed developments on Victoria Street South. The location of this proposed development is also exactly where Victoria Street narrows from 2 lanes to 1 in the westbound direction. This bottleneck frequently impedes the movement of fire engines, police cars, ambulances, and other traffic. Further, at the western edge of this proposed development, there is an active, unsignaled rail crossing which often interrupts traffic flow. It is not just the protected residence vehicles, but all of the required service vehicles that support condo living, which will increase traffic. Has any of this been factored into the traffic study? I suspect not. Much of the traffic will use Henry Street as a shortcut, as already happened, to avoid the Park and Victoria intersection, thus making our street, with its blind hill, even more dangerous than it is currently for the families, particularly those with small children who live here. Where are all the visitors and the other extra cars using these developments going to park? The answer is on Henry and Teresa, particularly during construction. What a potential cash cow for the bylaw parking enforcement department if they ever come and check. What a nightmare for anyone wanting to drive along Victoria Street South. When we moved here, Victoria Park was a beautiful feature of downtown Kitchener. Now, even before the next 2 developments are built, the Parks Department is struggling to keep up with park maintenance. In my experience, residents in nearby neighborhoods do not use the park on weekends as it is so overcrowded. In the last 3 years, camping has been allowed contrary to city bylaws, and this, coupled with overuse, particularly on the weekends, makes the park more of a blight on the city's landscape than the oasis that was originally intended. As a committee, can you, with a clear conscience, condone another massive development in our neighborhood without providing any more significant park space? To be clear, we aren't suggesting that there be no more development, only that developments adjacent to established low-rise neighborhoods, including designated heritage districts, respect the sensibilities, community, and cohesiveness of those areas so as not to destroy them for current and future residents. We believe that to best meet those objectives, proposed developments do not exceed the conditions imposed on them by the existing official plan and zoning bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Autos. We don't have any further questions for you. Up next, we have Margaret Nichols. Welcome.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, can you see me?
No, we cannot see you. You're on mute, Ms. Nichols.
Yeah, I got it now. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for having me present this evening. My name is Peggy Nichols, and I'm presenting on behalf of the Victoria Park Neighbourhood Association's Development Committee in response to the proposed development at the corner, the new development at the corner of Park and Victoria Street. As you know, our Development Committee's purpose is to advocate for sustainable and livable development in and around Victoria Park. Our core priorities are affordable housing, adequate park and green space, building with climate change in mind, and citizen engagement in the development process. We support the need for urban intensification and want to see a vibrant and thriving downtown. However, we are concerned that the current approach to growth is not resulting in affordable housing, adequate park space, buildings designed to minimize their impact on the environment, or benefiting from the insights of local residents. We have carefully reviewed the supporting documents related to this new development application for the corner of Victoria and Park, and are pleased to see several features that are important to those of us living in Kitchener's downtown urban neighbourhoods. These include 36 two-bedroom plus den units and 62 three-bedroom units that will enable families to live in the urban core. Green space and a public plaza that will be accessible to the community, the protection of a number of existing trees, mature trees, and consideration of water conservation objectives, rainwater harvesting, and low water use landscaping. However, we have a number of outstanding concerns related to our core priorities that prevent us from supporting this development application as it stands. We also have recommendations to address them. Affordability. The developer does not know any plans to provide affordable housing. Kitchener is experiencing a serious housing crisis, particularly for people on low to moderate incomes. Affordable units are being renovated or torn down to make way for more expensive units and new developments, adding to the housing crunch for our most vulnerable citizens. We recommend, as a minimum, at least 5% of all new units should be affordable, as established in Bill 23's plan for inclusionary zoning, and according to its extremely moderate definition of affordable. Even though this aspect of the new legislation has not yet been implemented, the developer would be able to demonstrate that he is civically responsible by meeting this need and not just developing for profit. Green spaces. Almost all of the new high-rises in downtown Kitchener are being built right up to the sidewalk. This creates a very poor pedestrian experience by leaving no room for trees or green space and by increasing the heat island effect of a concrete jungle. This is especially true of the new developments along Victoria Street between King and Park Streets and cannot be allowed to continue as development moves up Victoria beyond Park. We recommend that the developments be set back from the sidewalk the same distance as other houses on the block between Park and Walnut to allow for green spaces and trees. And as Councillor Clancy pointed out, more pavement is not what we need. We need more green spaces and trees. Climate change. In 2019, the City of Kitchener joined all other Region of Waterloo municipalities in declaring a climate emergency. It is incumbent on all new developments to maximize ways of protecting the environment and minimizing their greenhouse gas emissions. Little has been said about the developer's specific plans to conserve energy and water, other than to note that these issues will be addressed in the site plan application, as we heard this evening. We recommend that maximum effort be made to construct all aspects of the building with climate change in mind, and that these be made available to city planners and interested citizens as soon as possible. That at least 50% of car parking be equipped with EV charging stations, with the infrastructure installed for future charging stations as needed. That 400 bicycle parking spaces be provided. I know that the developer is providing quite a few bike parking spaces, but if you think about the number of people in that building and the fact that we're trying to encourage more people to bike, and the fact that there will be more than 2 people per unit in many of the units, you know, if 2 people have a bicycle, there's not going to be enough bike parking. And some of those bike parking units should also be EV equipped, the same as with the cars. that green roof elements be incorporated to mitigate rainwater runoff and reduce the building's contribution to the heat island. Community engagement. During the pre-application stage, there is a great deal of discussion between developers and planners prior to any consultation with citizens. We believe it would be helpful to everyone involved if the community were engaged earlier in the process. Citizens know their neighborhood on the ground. Like, just listen to how Mr. Gatos, described where he lives and the impact of the traffic and the accidents, the number of accidents that occur, the fact that people are digging down Henry Street to avoid parks, and I have to admit I've done that on occasion myself. I will stop doing that. Citizens know their neighborhood on the ground and have excellent insights about how new developments can contribute to the community in positive ways, both for existing and future residents. We recommend that a citizens engagement committee be formed composed of residents, city planners, and the developers' representatives to ensure ongoing consultation and communication throughout the development process. Thank you for your consideration of our comments, and I'm happy to respond to questions.
Thanks, Ms. Nichols. We do have a question for you. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Nichols, for your presentation. I just have a quick question, and you're the second delegate that has mentioned the lack of park space. Are we saying that Victoria Park is not big enough to for all the development and all the people who are moving into this area? Is that what?
Yes, that's what we're saying. We're absolutely saying that. I don't know who among you has been in Victoria Park on the weekends or even on a nice summer evening lately, but the park is packed, and Sheldon is right. Many of the people that live around the park are not using the park on the weekend. So, for example, when my granddaughter visits, we don't take her necessarily to Victoria Park because it's just so incredibly crowded. And I'm on the Victoria Park working group, and I know how hard the staff work, and they're really struggling to maintain the park with the kind of traffic that there is. And as we have such a huge concentration of high-rises and people now on Victoria Street, to us it makes sense to have more local park space to serve the needs of those residents. Victoria Park is not a park for local residents in any case, although we benefit from it. It's a destination park for people from all across the city, which is why we see it packed on beautiful summer evenings and weekends.
Okay, I guess I will just, before I end, I disagree with the comment that Victoria Park is not for the residents around the area. I believe Victoria Park is for all residents of the community. And it's one of those things. It's hard to, I've been down there the last little while, and I haven't seen it out of control or overly busy with my two girls, and so I was just trying to see, if the park is big enough with the new developments coming in. So, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Deneau. That's all the questions we have for you, Ms. Nichols. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we have Mr. Eglin. Welcome.
Good evening, councillors and staff. As you know, I'm the husband of Councillor Debbie Chapman. The following views are mine and should not be attributed to her. Seriously. There's a corruption in this province. It's the collusion between developers and the Ford government, particularly about building high-rise towers. Yes, I'm a NIMBY. I live at Strange and Cherry, 400 or 500 metres from the development in question. I don't want a tower in my backyard or anyone else's backyard. And I've been doing my best to stop this from happening anywhere in Kitchener over the last 7 years or so. We have towers not because anyone in their right mind thinks that they contribute to the well-being of cities, They obviously don't. They drive out people in the affordable housing that supports them from the core. They produce social isolation despite putting people in close physical proximity. They hasten global warming, are unhealthy, are anathema for families, produce traffic gridlock and vicious microclimates, blot out the sun and blight the skyline. Moreover, meeting the city's population density targets is readily achievable without them, and without breaching the countryside line. It's a convenient myth, frequently recited around this horseshoe, to suggest otherwise. Why do we have them then, you ask? We are forced to have them because they produce the greatest amount of profit per square foot of land for the investors who build them and own them. They're money-making projects for those who are already rich, an expression of the financialization of real estate, housing as speculative commodity, not housing as a human right. As such, they are one of the most antisocial things there are. Let me repeat that. High-rises are through and through anti-social. Forced, you say? Yes, because to quote Leonard Cohen, everybody knows the deal is rotten. Apologies to you, old Black Joe still picking cotton. We live in a plutocracy, the rule of the rich, the 1%, located in industrial and financial corporations, facilitated by liberal and conservative governments, and those complicit enablers in the professional middle class, news media, and local government who serve them. It's not a mystery, it's as plain as the nose on your face, and everybody knows. And so, yes, we've become satisfied with a pittance. Along comes a petty dictator, a shill for the plutocrats, who falls over himself offering even more of the riches of the land to his moneyed friends. And what do we do at the City of Kitchener? A few principled detractors aside, at best we try not to offend by conceding the table but angling for the crumbs. At worst we say, yes please, come right in. At the May 29th Council meeting, these chambers were witness to a travesty of democracy that I beg you not to repeat tonight. At issue was the approval of a Vive Cawley development proposal for Lancaster Street. One by one, councillors said they were unhappy with the proposal, but with a heavy heart would approve it because otherwise the developer would appeal a rejection to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which routinely fines for the developer. Any community benefits would be lost, and the loser at the OLT faced the prospect of paying the winner's costs. The proposal, as you know, was approved 9-2. Councillors claim to be affected by the pleas of residents who will lose their community in exchange for a unit in a high-rise for 5 years. But there's nothing we can do, they moaned. In the face of the Ford government's assault on local democracy, their hands were tied, they said. We have no choice but to go along, they said. Oh, really? City councillors did receive their mandate via the province from the citizens who elect them. They are, in addition, called to be responsive to the community members who express their views at neighbourhood information meetings, who submit written briefs, who appear before them at committees and council meetings. What is that system of local democracy worth? If their constitutional master effectively treats it as worth less, what is a representative of the people to do? Doff the cap? Go along? Submit to the whip? Really? The least councillors could do, who are not prepared to resist their subjection, is resign. What an uplifting experience it would have been to see councillors one after another resign their seats in protest at the emasculation of their democratic powers. For what would be the point of carrying on? One's legitimate authority had been usurped. The point of being a councillor had been removed. Let the province's anti-democratic coup be seen for what it is. Let the Ford government wear it in plain sight. Or do the job for which you were elected and refuse to approve an unacceptable proposal, in that case and in this one. Of course, to do that, you'd have to believe in and care about local democracy, in the value of the people you represent. Do you really want to concede the game to the 18% of the electorate that voted for him? Really? Refuse the towers.
Thank you, Mr. Eglin. We don't have any questions for you. Up next, we have Noi Pathmarong, and I'm not sure whether that's virtual or, yes, it's virtual. And I do apologize if I pronounced your last name incorrectly. Welcome.
No problem. I don't have any question. I just here to attend. I'm not here to present anything.
You just have questions?
No, I don't have any question. I'm just attending the meeting.
Oh, you're just an attendant. Okay. All right then. Okay, thank you. Up next, we have Albert Loeb. Welcome, Albert.
My question is simple. Do you, the councillors who represent the people, have confidence in the advice you've received from your technical experts as you assess the pros and cons of this project? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loeb. We don't have any questions for you. This is when we have our time for questions for staff, so if you want to click in. Oops, wrong one. Councillor Clancy.
Hi, I'm just curious. I didn't see any amount listed for parkland dedication. I know there's a parkette that's part of the proposal, and I know there's 50% of the land space, but it's not a huge patch. I know, to answer Councillor Deneau's comment earlier, we know that there's a very skewed ratio of downtown residents to parkland. So I appreciate that there's big green spaces, but there's also way more people. So I think, you know, moving forward, I know we have plans how to address that ratio, but I didn't see parkland dedication fees in this package. Did I miss it, or is there consideration you could speak to?
Through the chair. So parkland dedication will be taken in a combination of credit for the publicly accessible privately owned amenity space, as well as cash in lieu. Okay. And then our park staff has also identified that they would like to review through the updated urban design report more details on the on-site amenity space. So staff is recommending the urban design report to include an update on tower separation, as well as more details on on-site amenity.
Okay, so there is some cash that can be used at a future date towards the purchase of land and creation of park space?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, awesome. There was a concern raised by many residents that good urban planning says that taller buildings should be closer to the transit station and then decline from there, where higher buildings are close to the LRT, for example, and that the height of a building declines as you integrate more into the single-family dwelling zoned area. Can you speak to why that hasn't been the case in this intersection?
So through the chair, through the Park Central plan, there was preferred land use transitions that were proposed for the Park Central plan, and it essentially identified this corridor along Victoria Street for high-intensity mixed-use developments such as the one being considered today. As well, there is a transition height that is going towards the downtown, as well as the downtown has about 10 different towers in various stages of development that are in fact taller than the development being considered tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair. Ionitis. We often don't hear about vertical response time with regards to these high, tall buildings. Is that something the city works alongside the fire department to create a plan?
Through the chair, yes, through this site plan approval process, fire prevention staff does review the proposed development in terms of the fire route, as well as if the development is in accordance with our emergency services policy. So yes, it is reviewed through the site plan process.
And that includes the vertical response time, though?
That is correct.
Okay. Does each municipality kind of have their own definition of what that actually is? Or is it provincial standard? Do we know?
Through the chair, I'm not sure the exact definition of how it's regulated, but it's something we can follow up with our fire prevention staff on.
Okay, yeah, and that'd be great, please. My other question is about the POPs, the privately owned park. It's not. So POPs is privately owned park spaces. From what I've read, and I'm reading an article from last year in the Record, there was some discussion with the City of Kitchener and many concerns about them actually not being accessible. Owners or developers, when they turn the keys over to the owners, then they put fences up, they put gates up, they'll put signage up. And so what guarantee do we have that doesn't take place in this property? Or even furthermore, do we have any other POPs of recent developments that we've had concerns with? Or, yeah.
Through the chair, a public easement would be registered on title of the publicly accessible space. So that essentially would prevent those sort of things from happening, similar to preventing people from, say, putting fences or other structures on other easements. So it'd be treated the same kind of way, where there'd be mechanisms in place to ensure that the publicly accessible spaces continue to be publicly accessible.
But it's not a POPs, right? It's just a POPS, right? It's not a POPAS,
So
right?
it's privately owned, publicly accessible.
Yeah, okay. And that's in here, the POPAS? Or is it just
That
POPs?
is what is proposed.
Okay.
And the feasibility and the full details of that will be reviewed through the site plan approval stage.
Okay. So further to the question I asked, additionally to that, do we have any other developments that have come across council that have been built over the last couple of years that we've had any concerns with, that they're not accessible park spaces for the community in and around? Have we had any complaints?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the POPs are a new concept, so it's something that we haven't really worked with the industry on to date. Our preference was to have a publicly owned parkland, or to accept cash in lieu and then develop a park to our own operational standards. As a result of the approval of Bill 23, it's something that we have to consider. So we're having early conversations, and there's nothing in the Planning Act which would prohibit us from adding regulations or standards to a publicly accessible space. So, we know, and we've had conversations with our operations staff, clear sight lines, wayfinding sign, reducing any barriers and making it feel like it's publicly owned and accessible is really key to the success of these features. So that's something that we continue to work with our operations and park staff on. We don't have any that I'm aware of currently. We had one proposal at One Adam, and it ended up becoming a city-owned park. So we have a couple that we're in discussions about. We'll bring one in 2 weeks' time as well, but it's something that absolutely design is critical to their success.
Okay, you must be reading the same article I was, but thanks, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Councillor Uduani.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've heard concerns and read concerns about the traffic for Victoria, and I drive on Victoria regularly as well, and that's an area of concern for me. Putting something like this could really make things a bit more complicated in terms of traffic in that area. But from what I'm reading here, it says the traffic impact report says this is okay. I just want to get a better understanding of what goes into a traffic impact report.
So a traffic impact study which was prepared and reviewed by the city and regional transportation staff, is essentially reviewed with current traffic volumes in its model to ensure that this development will not result in any negative impacts to essentially the network and the road infrastructure. So if there were any impacts that would be impacted by this development, mitigations would be required. In this particular application, the region has not addressed or identified any major concerns and has rather requested a holding provision for an updated traffic impact study for review and approval by the Region of Waterloo for a sensitivity analysis to close rail transit access. So that would be essentially evaluating the access location to the nearby CN Railway, as well as a need for the proposed Victoria Street access. So what this means is the Park Street access will act as a primary vehicular access for this development, and the feasibility of the second proposed access off Victoria Street will be reviewed through the site plan process.
Thank you, Councillor Houdouani. We have Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I want to just circle back to the privately owned, publicly accessible parks that you say is coming down. And again, I know we had lengthy conversations on this a year or two ago, maybe even longer. And I'm wondering, is the Ontario Condo Authority involved in all these plans too? Because condominiums generally don't have public access to their space. So when this comes forward, will there be assurance that this really is, I guess I'm going to say legitimate? I'm not questioning your expertise, but I just want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that's part of the complication, and that's part of what will be required as part of a developer build agreement. So publicly accessible spaces, we protect for that with an easement, but we don't own the property. The City of Kitchener would not own the property. There are different ways to legally structure it, but as a non-property owner, we protect our access rights through an easement, and then maintenance and insurance liabilities are within the realm of the condominium corporation. So we are seeing that there's an expense and a long-term maintenance obligation, and typically we're only going to see pops we anticipate in larger developments when that cost can be shared across a larger amount of units.
Okay, I guess where I question is, once the developer's finished, it becomes the responsibility of the condominium corporation, not the developer. So I mean, we could have this long conversation about this. I'm curious to see how this is going to pan out, because, yeah, thanks.
Yes, in summary, we obligate the owner. So when the developer has gone into the condominium corporation, they're the owner. Through our standard development agreement, they're obligated for the life of the development to maintain the standards in which it was built.
Okay, and that has to be agreed upon at this stage, like before the whole concept is approved.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. My question is around concerns that residents have raised around the surround of this and frankly, other places on Victoria Street being very concrete, that the building goes right out to the sidewalk. I know that in here we've said that there will need to be an updated urban design report on this, and I'm wondering if that's something that can be addressed here to make it a friendlier streetscape. Is there opportunities to require trees and landscaping here? I'll let you answer that.
So through the chair, the proposed development, the building is proposed to be set back 6.5 meters post-road widening. So the region would take a road widening along Victoria Street, and the building itself would be set back 6.5 meters, which is essentially in line with the buildings directly beside it. And within that 6.5 meters, the applicant is proposing enhanced landscaping, a patio area for the commercial units, and if the vehicular access is not feasible off Victoria Street, additional landscaping and amenity could be provided along there as well.
Okay, thank you. Another point that was raised tonight as well was around bicycle parking And if we're cutting back on the cart, we are cutting back on the parking provisions. Is there a way of increasing bicycle parking and bicycle amenities here?
Through the chair, so through the bylaw, the applicant is required to provide 0.5 Class A bicycle parking spaces per unit. They've gone above and beyond that. They're providing 296 spaces. And then in terms of EV spaces, they're providing 70 EV-ready spaces for future residents of this development.
Good, that was going to be my next question. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Johnston. Second round, Councillor Clancy.
Yeah, sorry, I just have one more question. I wonder if staff could give an update about the inclusionary zoning, 5% of affordable housing that is part of Bill 23. Is there a projection of when that could come online so that in future that would be part of a development?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you'll receive an information report as part of the June 19th Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee package. Our next meeting, you'll get an update on consultation that has occurred to date. We anticipate implementing inclusionary zoning in December of this year, along with the Growing Together land use framework for the MTSAs west of the Expressway.
Is there a chance that that could happen sooner? I just feel like we'll have thousands of units approved before that time. I mean, I know you're only a certain number of people, so and I appreciate how burdened you've been with all the changes that have happened with the province. Just to, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, we are committed to the December timeframe for a few reasons. One, the inclusionary zoning is part of the land use framework that would be implemented as part of updating land use permissions for the MTSA. So the zoning and land use that we're planning to consult on over the summer, go back out with the community in response to the workshops. We want to be able to have that and then come back to council in December with the results and land use recommendations, and that's when we would implement the inclusionary zoning. So in our view, as part of the comprehensive planning process, December would be the earliest for inclusionary zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. I have a question. How far along are we on in this application with regards to the 90-day appealable period? Mr. Stevenson?
Yes, I have the master spreadsheet. So this application was deemed complete on March 27th, 2023, meaning that a decision is required prior to July 25th of this year. So council does not have a planning committee meeting during July, so this is the second last opportunity to consider this application.
Okay. Okay, we have no further questions. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Schneider. Any questions? Any comments? Councillor Clancy?
I just want to echo a little bit of what Peter shared today. I feel like with the way the province has shifted, the use of an OLT is undemocratic. It's putting the legal fees as a threat to cities, impedes our ability to vote with our integrity at times, or our conscience, or thinking of other fiduciary responsibilities. So I hope you know, that you'll advocate to the province, that we can advocate to the province to find a system that I think provides a more collaborative way to move forward with development projects. I know we need housing. This is an intensive project, and I wish there was more. I hope you can bring back to your partner that our city needs affordable housing. Other developers have been able to come forward and offer some contribution to the community when it comes to affordable housing funding and units. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple things, just because it was asked. our confidence in our planning staff. I think it's important to say personally speaking, I have absolute confidence in our planning staff. Planning staff's job isn't to do what we want them to do, or frankly to do what the residents want them to do. It's to interpret planning rules and bring back a recommendation in the professional capacity that they have. And in that respect, and I believe my fellow members of council have every confidence in planning staff since it was asked. We're getting, it's I think a little off topic in terms of the OLT when it comes to this development. My understanding is, my sense is that it's going to be passing, but I would echo Councillor Clancy's comments in terms of advocacy. That's what we have to do to try and get more input on these developments, fully acknowledging we are in a housing supply crisis at the same time. But the reality is saying no to developments like this, and the one on Lancaster for that point, is, I would say, astonishingly unpragmatic. It is causing, frankly, some of us, the easy decision is to say no politically, but some of us would rather cause a lesser amount of harm and perhaps be disliked for it than to cause a greater amount of harm and be loved. So that's the decision that we're facing until we do have some more of that advocacy that Councillor Clancy mentioned. So I will be supporting this.
Councillor Clancy, are you asking for a point of clarification? Go ahead.
I think as elected officials, we can disagree. I think there's a bigger context sometimes to votes that we make, and I think people might still have integrity to do their job and vote as they wish, and I don't think that we need to belittle or coerce anyone to vote in favor of something or against something. I think.
Go ahead, Councillor Davey.
Sorry, apologies, Councillor Clancy. I was agreeing with you. I'm not sure.
I felt like the part about advocacy agreed, but I think your comment about voting practice or voting in one way or another, that particular comment.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure how you were voting on this. Apologies.
Yeah. So I feel that there is many pieces and many parts to this conversation, and I hope that we'll have a chance as a council and as staff to figure out how we can advocate in harmony with each other. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I call vote, I'll make my comments. I would have preferred to have seen a little bit more, personally. I feel compared to the last few applicants that have been to this horseshoe, we've seen some community benefits. I am very appreciative of the makeup of the units, but I really hope that when this comes back, I'm not sure what day this comes back, is it next week or 2 weeks' time, that I hope that there's some additional information there that can otherwise, because I don't feel confident in myself right now in wanting to approve this, but I'll pass it for today. But I would really like to see a little bit more compared to some of the other developments that we've seen in the last few months. So all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And that concludes the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Clancy, thank you.